Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Wells, and for those of you who don't know me, I am an ambassador with Habitat for Humanity, but my background is in biology and I am an environmental advocate, so I am all about protecting our planet for the future. Today we are going to be talking about bushfire resilience, climate change, and why it's important to be an amazing advocate, but also volunteer, and how you can actually help people that are vulnerable and people that are in need across Australia with Habitat for Humanity. We're going to be talking to Philip Sen, who is the Community Development Manager for Bushfire Resilience at Habitat for Humanity. So I'm just waiting for him to join in with us. Hopefully he can pop up here soon. But I've been working with Habitat for the last few years. They are an amazing organisation. I've been out with them in the field volunteering, and it's such a great opportunity to give back to people that are in need, also meet a bunch of amazing people and really work together to help protect people for the future. But also the kind of work I was working on was people that had already been affected by bushfires. So Habitat do work all around the world, but here in Australia, they are really working on bushfire resilience, especially in New South Wales, and getting people prepared for what's potentially to come. We've seen the devastating effects of climate change in the last few years, especially with the bushfires, but also now with floods. And we need to be prepared and be proactive rather than being reactive. And that's what Habitat are all about. Now, Philip, are you here at all? Can I add you? Actually, here we go. Instagram Live. What a great little tool to get everyone on board at the same time. And yeah, feel free to send through any questions if you like. Here's Philip now. Hey Philip, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Good to see you, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you, and that we can tell everyone all about Habitat and also the great things that you are doing, but also why it's really important as well.
Thanks, you're welcome.
So let's start off. What actually is disaster resilience?
Yeah, so disaster resilience, it's something that's going to be increasingly important for people living in Australia and indeed around the world. But basically, climate change means that the disasters, the so-called natural disasters that we face, cyclones, droughts, bushfires, floods, they're just going to get more and more intense and more frequent as time goes by. There's no stopping climate change, I'm afraid. We're already in it. And Australia and the Pacific region, as we've seen over the last few years, we're right at the forefront. Just in New South Wales, where I live, we've seen 2 floods in the last 2 years. We've seen the incredible bushfires of 2019 to 2020. We've seen a really terrible drought season before that. So resilience is all about being ready for what is actually going to come. And, it's climate action in the sense that, we're taking on climate change and making sure that people actually have the resources and the skills and the plans that they need to actually deal with the consequences.
Yeah, we've seen Habitat work in the past, especially on the cleanup kind of phase after the disaster has happened. Habitat are really moving into that resilience phase now of being proactive and getting people ready for when the disaster does come. How are we seeing that shift in mindset? Are people really getting on board with that?
That's right. And I think that, certainly in Australia, that shift in mindset is coming both among the people of Australia and, hopefully within the government and the authorities that need to make this happen. Definitely there's, a lot of funding coming from government of every colour towards disaster resilience. And ultimately, every dollar you spend on resilience saves a lot of money on recovery. The medicine's better than the cure. Prevention's better than the cure, rather. It's much better to help people be ready and have the resources they need rather than go to them after they've been hit by a disaster and have lost everything. So resilience is going to be the language of the future, I'm afraid to say.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And so why is Habitat for Humanity Australia kind of focused on bushfire resilience in particular?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, Habitats is all about shelter and making sure that people have a fair go through having a roof over their head. bushfire can be one of the most devastating natural disasters. And those of us who saw the news or witnessed the 2019 to 2020, the so-called Black Summer, just saw just how incredibly destructive bushfires can be. It's one of the biggest threats that's posed to people who live in many areas of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, indeed all around the country. And if a bushfire gets near to your home, it will destroy your home. You will lose everything. So it's a terrible disaster that's that people really need to be aware of, particularly the most vulnerable people. And sadly, any kind of disaster affects the most vulnerable people the most badly. By that I mean, the elderly, people with disabilities, people on lower incomes. They're the ones who really suffer most of all. And it's up to us as a not-for-profit and up to us as a society to help those people.
Absolutely. And I think especially people in Australia at the moment, we went through the bushfires a few years ago, and that's kind of gone out of our mind a little bit because then we've been hit with COVID, but also these huge floods. Bushfires are still a huge issue going forward, aren't they? Especially with all the rain that we've had.
That's right. And, people will say, and it's correct, bushfires have affected the Australian landscape for thousands, millions of years. And the Indigenous people of Australia, definitely knew that, and they developed some incredible techniques for managing bushfire and cultural burning and so on and so forth. But the thing is that climate change is going to mean that bushfires are going to get more and more intense as the climate changes. It will get hotter, it will get drier. And the recent amount of rain, even though ironically it means nobody really wants to think about bushfire because it's cold and wet, but the amount of rain has meant that vegetation in those bushfire exposed areas has grown immensely. Every day when we're out on site, we see all kinds of saplings growing around people's houses and properties, all kinds of weeds, both indigenous Australian plants and non-natives, which are adding to the problem. So it's just become unmanageable, and we meet a lot of people for whom it's become overwhelming. They cannot physically manage the amount of growth that's happened around their homes, and their homes are no longer safe. It's a huge fire hazard, and they need a bit of help getting back on top of it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what Habitat's all about, isn't it? Looking after the vulnerable people and making them resilient, especially in this bushfire sense. Who are the vulnerable people?
We've met quite a lot of people over the last 6 to 8 months that we've been implementing this resilience program. But, very typical will be an older retired couple, and they may have been living in the mountains or the Southern Highlands near to Sydney all of their lives, or they may have moved there for retirement. And the thing is that they will have bought their house and moved in, hoping to have a retirement in a beautiful area of the country. But then often one of them will get sick, or one of them will become disabled, one of them will pass away, and all of a sudden what seemed like a dream property becomes a really difficult property to manage. And bushfire resilience is quite hard work. It really does involve some physical work that's much better done with a team of people rather than an individual. So that's one of the reasons that this program exists, to help those people who are losing the physical capacity to take away all that vegetation and all those fire hazards, and just get them back on track and make sure that they are safer from the bushfire threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking after so older generations, people that maybe are mobile, the real vulnerable people out there in areas around Australia that are going to be probably hit next or again with bushfires. How about, what sort of activities is it like being on a Habitat bushfire resilience program? What are people going to get themselves into by helping these vulnerable people?
Okay. All I can promise you is that you'll probably get tired, cold and wet, but you'll actually have a lot of fun with a team of like-minded people. When we talk about bushfire risk, probably the biggest danger from a bushfire is what we call ember attack. So if you live close enough to the bush, close enough to wooded areas, if there's a bushfire out in the national park, for example, embers from the burn can actually fly into the air and they will land on your garden, alight. And if you have, too much fuel, for example, overgrown vegetation or gutters full of leaves, those embers will basically set your property on fire very, very quickly, and then it becomes impossible to put it out. So what we're doing is helping people just manage, make their properties ready for that kind of ember attack. And it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the time, we have whippersnippers and brush cutters, and our volunteers will strap on the brush cutter and just go around the garden and cut everything down and tidy it up. As we move through the program, we're finding more and more people who need help with their gutters. The gutters is actually another area that's very vulnerable to embers, because if an ember lands on your roof and there's leaves in your gutter, those leaves will catch fire, and then your house will catch fire soon afterwards. And then lastly, from time to time, there's opportunities to help with some minor repairs and maintenance and blocking entry points for those embers. For example, if you have a veranda or a deck and an ember lands underneath and sets fire to something underneath, then there goes your veranda or your deck, especially if it's made of wood. So it's useful to have a bit of mesh just to prevent embers from getting in. So all of this work is, it's quite straightforward. It's actually quite good fun. I mean, I actually quite enjoy getting with the brush cutter and cutting down all of the trees. It's very, very satisfying, actually. I felt a team of people can do a lot.
No, sorry, I was going to say, I felt the same when I was on my volunteer days at Habitat. I loved getting in there and, getting those tools out and chopping things down, knowing that I was actually making a difference.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing that's, other than, the satisfaction of doing the work and seeing what you've achieved, other than, the fun of working with like-minded people and enjoying a break with them and having lunch and being out in the national parks, the most beautiful parts of the world, these are World Heritage sites, not just state or national parks. The gratitude that you see from the residents time after time, we see people and a weight almost is physically lifted from their shoulders, because these people know that they're at risk. They many of them evacuated during the last bushfire season, and some people we know lost their homes, others just got away with it, and they know at the risk that they're at, and they know that they're no longer able to keep their properties safe by themselves. And just seeing the weight lift off their shoulders when we finish the job, and the thanks that we get, because those people feel so much safer after we've done that for them, and that's reward enough.
Yeah, it is. I know that from being on my trips, just that feeling of giving back and making people feel safer. And this was for me, it was, after the disaster and seeing what these people had lost, but just being able to help them kind of get back on their feet. But now going into the resilience phase and people feeling safer from the get-go, knowing that, their property and their livelihood and themselves are going to be a lot safer next time the disaster rolls around. It's such a great feeling to give back in a way that's really easy to do when when you've got the opportunity to do it.
That's right. And and all you need to do is, if you log into our website, habitat.org.au, and find the sections on how to volunteer, there's many opportunities to do it, because, our resilience program is pretty big at the moment. We're in the Southern Highlands and the Blue Mountains, also going towards the Hawkesbury and Lithgow, Wollondilly and Widgecarribee areas. So they're all quite reachable from Sydney. So sign up, look for the individual volunteering days, and come along. We need as many hands as we can get, because resilience is an ongoing thing. We will need to be working and helping people for the foreseeable future. That's the difference with recovery. Many people, and we thank them so much for helping with the bushfire recovery, which was our previous program. That's more or less finished with, but resilience will go on, and all we can do is help people, as many people as we can, be ready for next time. We don't know where the next bushfire will strike. We don't know when. We just know that it probably will.
Absolutely. And in the links on the live, everyone, Monique from Habitat Australia has been popping in the link to the website so that you can jump on and volunteer and see what dates are available. It's such a great way to get your friends together to go out and, you know, experience nature for a day, give back to some people that really, really need your help to be safe going into the future, to have that resilience. But yeah, just having that sense of pride when you finish a volunteer day, and then, you know, you can stay in the local area, maybe the Blue Mountains, or as you said, the Southern Highlands where Habitat's working, and experience that local area too. It's a great way just to get out for a weekend, or during the week as well if you've got the day off.
Yeah. Totally, yeah. I mean, you know, come out on a Friday or come out on a weekend, and the mountains where I live myself. After COVID and the pandemic and many other things, the tourism industry really needs people to come back and experience the incredible natural beauty and go on bushwalks and come to some of the hotels and restaurants, some really good ones. So there's a lot to do besides volunteering and assisting people with their bushfire resilience. What have you got to lose?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot to lose if we don't do it, isn't there? Thank you, Philip. That was great. So if anyone would like to jump on with Habitat for Humanity, I can absolutely vouch for it because I've done it myself, and I'll be out there with the resilience team in the not too distant future with a bunch of friends, getting a hold of those whippersnippers and chopping down a lot of the overgrown vegetation and cleaning out gutters, all the things that we take for granted, the little things that we can do but some other people can't. So helping people to stay safe and stay well and keep their property and their livelihoods into the future is really important. So Philip, to sum up, what's your experience with doing these days? How does it make you feel?
Well, like I said, I mean, as one of the program managers on this program, we have, first and foremost, we have an incredible team of staff. We have site supervisors like Jacob, Ben, and Simon, who look after the volunteer teams. They're great fun to be around. I co-manage the program with Christine, who works in the Southern Highlands, who works in the Blue Mountains. And, first and foremost, it's a great team to work with. We have fun and we really get a lot of work done while enjoying ourselves. But secondly, the volunteers and the people that we meet, they really make it. Lastly, the residents, the people we're actually assisting, in a sense that they're part of the team too. They're often guiding us of what they need to be done. They're the experts after all. And so often, people bring around cups of tea or cakes and buns that they've baked for us. And it's so special. And you really feel every day you've achieved something. You've enjoyed time with your friends and colleagues, and you've really helped out residents who are exposed to bushfire just be that little bit safer. So keep on coming. Thank you very much for everyone involved.
Thank you, Philip. All right, everyone. So if you want to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity Australia, jump onto their website. You can sign up for the Bushfire Resilience Days, grab some friends, make a weekend out of it, make a few days out of it during the week, and really give back to your community. You will not regret it. It'll give you the warm and fuzzies, and know that you're helping people be safer for the future, especially with climate change knocking down our doors at the moment. So thanks again, Philip, and jump on board to Habitat for Humanity Australia.
Thank you, Laura, and looking forward to seeing you up here in the Blue Mountains soon.
Yeah, can't wait. And everyone else that's on the live, we hope to see you there too.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.